I asked for a 9% raise at 38 years old. My wife's father, the CEO, burst into laughter and said, "Maybe it's time for early retirement." So I did exactly what he suggested. One phone call later, his biggest rival made me an offer that tripled my salary. The CEO had no idea what was coming. My name is David Hartley, and 3 weeks ago, I was sitting in a conference room watching my career get dismantled by the man whose daughter I'd been married to for 12 years. What he didn't know was that I'd already made the phone call that would destroy everything he'd built. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. From the moment I realized that loyalty meant nothing when you married into the wrong family. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Your support helps us bring you more incredible stories like this one. And don't forget to like this video, it really helps the channel grow. Now, let's continue. I met Alexis Pemberton when I was 26, and she was 24. She worked in marketing at a tech startup where I was the lead software architect. Back then, I was just another programmer trying to make a name for himself in Silicon Valley's endless sea of ambitious coders. Alexis was beautiful, confident, and had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room when she talked to you. We dated for 2 years before I found out who her father was. Not because she was hiding it, but because she genuinely seemed to want to build something with me that wasn't connected to his money or influence. Gregory Pemberton was the CEO and founder of Pemberton Technologies, a company worth $800 million that specialized in enterprise software solutions for Fortune 500 companies. When Alexis finally introduced me to her parents at a family dinner, I was nervous as hell. I showed up in my best suit, the one I'd bought for job interviews, and tried not to feel intimidated by their mansion in Pacific Heights. Gregory was charming that night, asked me about my work, seemed genuinely interested in my background. Her mother, Patricia, was polite but distant, the kind of woman who'd perfected the art of looking through people rather than at them. "Software architecture," Gregory had said, swirling his wine. "That's where the real innovation happens. Anyone can write code, but designing the systems that scale, that takes real talent." I'd felt validated that night, seen. Like maybe I could belong in this world where people had vacation homes and wore watches that cost more than my car. We got married in a ceremony that cost more than my parents' house. Alexis wanted something intimate, but Patricia insisted on inviting 300 of their closest friends and business associates. I stood at that altar in a tuxedo that cost $4,000 and promised to love Alexis forever, while her father gave a toast about how proud he was to welcome me into the Pemberton family. What I didn't understand then was that welcome had conditions attached. 6 months after the wedding, Gregory offered me a position at Pemberton Technologies, senior software architect, reporting directly to the CTO. The salary was good, not great, but he'd framed it as an opportunity to learn the business from the inside, to grow with the company. Alexis was excited about us working together, building something as a team. "Think about it, David," she'd said one night in our new apartment that her parents had helped us buy. "You'd be part of the family business. Dad sees real potential in you." I took the job. That was my first mistake. For the next 12 years, I worked my ass off at Pemberton Technologies. I redesigned their entire back-end infrastructure, cutting server costs by 40%. I led the team that developed their flagship product upgrade, which brought in $60 million in new contracts. I mentored junior developers, pulled all-nighters when deadlines loomed, and became the go-to person for solving problems nobody else could crack. My salary increased gradually over those years, from $120,000 to $165,000. Not bad for most people, but significantly below market rate for someone with my skills and track record. I'd seen colleagues leave for other companies and double their salaries overnight. But every time I thought about leaving, Alexis would remind me about loyalty, about family, about how her father valued long-term commitment over job hopping. "Money isn't everything," she'd say. "You're building something meaningful here. Dad always says the best leaders are the ones who stick around through the hard times." The hard times she was talking about never seemed to affect the Pemberton family personally. They still took their annual trips to Europe, still hosted dinner parties where the wine cost more per bottle than I made in a week. But the company employees, we were supposed to be grateful for the privilege of working for Gregory Pemberton's vision. I turned 38 last month. Alexis threw me a surprise party at our house, invited mostly her friends and family. Her father gave a speech about how proud he was of me, how I'd become an essential part of the Pemberton Technologies family. Everyone clapped. I smiled and thanked him, but inside I was doing math. 12 years at the company, 12 years of below-market compensation, 12 years of being treated like family at dinner parties but like just another employee when it came to actual advancement. I'd been watching the tech industry closely over the past year. Engineers with half my experience were making $250,000, $300,000, some even more. Meanwhile, I was stuck at $165,000 with an annual bonus that barely covered property taxes on the house Alexis insisted we buy in the right neighborhood. The breaking point came during my annual review 3 weeks ago. I'd prepared carefully, documenting every major project I'd led, every cost saving I'd implemented, every team member I'd mentored who'd gone on to great things. I'd practiced my pitch about market rates and fair compensation. The meeting was scheduled for 2:00 p.m. in Gregory's office, that corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. He kept me waiting 20 minutes, something he'd never done before. When his assistant finally showed me in, Gregory was on a phone call, gesturing for me to sit while he wrapped up whatever deal he was closing. "David," he said finally, hanging up and leaning back in his leather chair. "Good to see you. How's my daughter treating you?" "Alexis is great," I said. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about my compensation package." His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. "Your compensation. We just did your annual review last month." "I know, and I appreciate the 3% raise. But I've been looking at market rates for senior architects with my experience level, and there's a significant gap between what I'm making and what the industry standard is." Gregory steepled his fingers, studying me like I was a problem he needed to solve. "Market rates. You're talking about those ridiculous salaries the big tech companies throw around to poach talent." "I'm talking about fair compensation for the value I bring to this company," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Over the past 12 years, I've led projects that have generated over $200 million in revenue. I've cut operational costs by millions. I think a 9% increase to bring me more in line with industry standards is reasonable. 9% would have brought me to $180,000, still below market, but at least moving in the right direction." Gregory was quiet for a long moment, then he started laughing. Not a polite chuckle, but full-throated laughter that made his face turn red. 9%, he said, wiping his eyes. "David, you're serious. You actually walked in here expecting me to give you a 9% raise." I felt my stomach tighten. "Based on my performance and market standards, yes." "Let me tell you something about market standards," Gregory said, leaning forward. "Those companies paying ridiculous salaries, they burn through cash and fold within 5 years. We've been in business for 30 years because we're smart about compensation. We pay fairly, we reward loyalty, but we don't participate in these bidding wars that inflate everyone's expectations." "I'm not asking for a bidding war," I said. "I'm asking for fair market value." Gregory's smile disappeared. "You know what I think, David? I think maybe you've gotten a little comfortable. Maybe it's time to remember that not everyone gets to work at a company like this. Maybe it's time for early retirement if you're not happy with what we're offering." The words hung in the air between us. Early retirement. At 38 years old. "Are you firing me?" I asked, my voice surprisingly calm. "I'm suggesting that if you're not satisfied with your compensation, perhaps you should explore other options. See what the market really thinks you're worth, without the Pemberton name behind you." I stood up slowly. "Understood. I'll think about what you said." "Good man," Gregory said, already turning back to his computer. "Oh, and David, let's keep this conversation between us. No need to worry Alexis about work stuff." I walked out of his office and went straight to the parking garage. Sat in my car for 20 minutes, hands shaking, trying to process what had just happened. My father-in-law, the man who'd welcomed me into his family, had just told me to take early retirement at 38 because I'd asked for a raise that would still leave me underpaid. That's when I made the phone call that would change everything. 6 months earlier, I'd been contacted by a recruiter for Summit Ridge Technologies, Pemberton's biggest competitor. They'd heard about my work and wanted to discuss opportunities. I'd politely declined, citing loyalty to my current employer, but I'd kept the recruiter's number in my phone just in case. "This is David Hartley," I said when she answered. "We spoke 6 months ago about opportunities at Summit Ridge. Is that position still available?" "Mr. Hartley," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "I'm so glad you called. Actually, we've been following your work closely. The position I mentioned is filled, but we have something better. Can you meet tomorrow morning? The interview took place at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory. The hiring manager was a woman named Jennifer Park, their VP of engineering. She was direct, asked smart questions, and seemed genuinely impressed by my portfolio. "I'll be honest with you, David," she said after an hour of technical discussion. "We've been trying to catch up to Pemberton Technologies for 5 years. You're the architect behind their success. We want you to do for us what you did for them." "What kind of compensation are we talking about?" I asked. Jennifer slid a folder across the table. "Base salary of $320,000, annual bonus potential of 30%, stock options that vest over 4 years, full benefits package, and a signing bonus of $150,000. I stared at the numbers, nearly double what Pemberton was paying me. "There's one condition," Jennifer said. "We need you to start within 2 weeks. We're launching a major initiative and we need your expertise immediately." "I'll need to give notice," I said. 2 weeks is notice. We'll make it work on our end if you can make it work on yours." I signed the offer letter right there in the coffee shop. Then I drove home and prepared for the hardest conversation of my life. Alexis was in the kitchen when I got home, chopping vegetables for dinner. She looked up and smiled when I walked in, that same smile that had made me fall in love with her 14 years ago. "How was your day?" she asked. "I need to talk to you about something," I said. Her smile faded. "What's wrong?" "I had my annual review with your father today. I asked for a 9% raise to bring my salary more in line with market rates." Alexis set down her knife. "And?" He laughed at me, told me maybe it's time for early retirement if I'm not happy with my compensation. She was quiet for a moment. "David, you know how Dad is. He's old school about these things. He probably didn't mean it the way it sounded." "He meant it exactly the way it sounded, Alexis. He's been underpaying me for 12 years and he knows it." "Underpaying you?" Her voice rose. "My father gave you a job when you were nobody. He's treated you like family." "He's treated me like cheap labor with a family discount," I said, "and I'm done with it." "What does that mean?" "It means I accepted a position with Summit Ridge Technologies. I start in 2 weeks. The color drained from Alexis's face. "Summit Ridge, Dad's biggest competitor." "Yes." "You can't be serious. David, that's betrayal. That's going to destroy my relationship with my family." "Your father told me to explore other options. I did. This is what the market thinks I'm worth." Alexis grabbed her phone. "I'm calling my father. We need to fix this before it gets out of hand." "It's already out of hand," I said, "and I don't want to fix it. I'm done being undervalued because I married into the wrong family." She stared at me like I was a stranger. "The wrong family? That's what you think of us?" "I think your father has been using our relationship to keep me under his thumb for 12 years, and I think you've been helping him do it by making me feel guilty every time I mentioned looking elsewhere." "That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed, and it sounded bitter even to my ears. "Let me tell you about fair. Fair would have been paying me market rate for my skills. Fair would have been promoting me based on my contributions rather than keeping me in the same position for a decade. Fair would have been your father treating me like the valuable employee I am, instead of like the charity case he did a favor by hiring." Alexis was crying now. "I can't believe you're doing this. To me, to my family. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm finally doing something for myself." She left the room, phone pressed to her ear, already calling her father. I could hear her voice rising in the other room, explaining the situation, asking for advice, probably asking him to fix it. I went to our bedroom and started packing a bag. I'd already arranged to stay with my brother across town for a few weeks while I figured out living arrangements. The house was in both our names, but her parents had made the down payment. I knew what was coming. Alexis appeared in the doorway 20 minutes later. Her face was blotchy from crying, but her expression was hard. "Dad wants to see you tomorrow morning. Early, before you go to work. Tell him I'll be there at 7 a.m., I said. "But I'm not changing my mind. He's going to make you a counteroffer, a real one." "I don't want a counteroffer. I want respect. And your father made it clear today that I'm never going to get that at Pemberton Technologies." The meeting the next morning was in the same conference room where I'd spent hundreds of hours over the past 12 years. Gregory was already there when I arrived, along with Patricia, Alexis, and the company's head of HR, a man named Robert Strauss. "David," Gregory said, gesturing to an empty chair. "Sit down. Let's talk about this rationally." I remained standing. "I'm here as a courtesy. My decision is final." "Summit Ridge is our direct competitor," Gregory said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "You're taking 12 years of proprietary knowledge to them. That's not just unethical, it's potentially illegal. Everything I know I learned through publicly available resources and my own skills. I never signed a non-compete, and I'm not taking any proprietary information with me." Robert cleared his throat. "Actually, David, when you were promoted to senior architect, you did sign a non-compete clause. It prohibits you from working for direct competitors for 18 months. I'd expected this. I reviewed my employment contract last night with an attorney. That non-compete is unenforceable in California for employees making less than $200,000 annually. Since my salary is $165,000, it doesn't apply." The room went quiet. Gregory's face turned red. "You've really thought this through," he said finally. "I've had 12 years to think it through. Your suggestion about early retirement just helped me make the final decision." Alexis stood up. "David, please. We can fix this. Dad, tell him you'll match the offer." "Match it?" Gregory looked at his daughter like she'd lost her mind. "They're probably offering him double what he's worth just to stick it to us." "They're offering me what the market says I'm worth," I corrected, "which is significantly more than you've been paying me." "Fine," Gregory said, standing up. "Go to Summit Ridge. See how long you last when you don't have the Pemberton name protecting you. See what happens when you're just another employee instead of family." "I've always been just another employee," I said quietly. "That's the problem." I turned to leave, but Gregory's voice stopped me. "David, if you walk out that door, you're walking out on my daughter too. Family is everything to us. You choose Summit Ridge, you're choosing to destroy your marriage." I looked at Alexis. She was crying again, but she wasn't meeting my eyes. "Is that true?" I asked her. "If I take this job, we're done?" She didn't answer right away. Her mother leaned over and whispered something to her. Finally, Alexis nodded. "I can't be married to someone who betrayed my family," she said softly. "I didn't betray anyone. I finally stood up for myself." "It's the same thing to us," Patricia said coldly. I walked out of that conference room and never looked back. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Alexis kept the house since her parents had made the down payment. I kept my car, my savings, and my self-respect. The split was surprisingly amicable once we got past the initial anger. I think she'd been as trapped by her family's expectations as I had been. At Summit Ridge, I hit the ground running. Jennifer Park gave me complete creative freedom to redesign their entire software architecture. I hired a team of brilliant engineers, many of them people I'd worked with at Pemberton who were also tired of being undervalued. Within 6 months, we'd launched a product that was faster, more reliable, and 30% cheaper than anything Pemberton Technologies offered. Within a year, Summit Ridge had overtaken them in market share for 3 of their core product lines. Gregory tried to fight back. He launched a smear campaign, spreading rumors that I'd stolen trade secrets. But when his lawyers couldn't produce any evidence, the case was dismissed. He attempted to poach my team members with inflated offers, but by then we'd built something special at Summit Ridge, a culture where talent was actually valued. The final blow came when Pemberton Technologies lost their biggest client, a Fortune 100 company that had been with them for 15 years. They switched to Summit Ridge specifically because of the architecture I'd designed. I heard through the industry grapevine that Gregory had to lay off 200 employees after that loss, that the board was questioning his leadership, that he'd aged 10 years in the past 18 months. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt free. Last week, I ran into Alexis at a coffee shop downtown. She looked tired, older than her 36 years. We made awkward small talk for a few minutes before she finally said what she'd been wanting to say. "Dad had a stroke last month. Mild one, but it forced him to step back from the company." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, I didn't wish the man harm. "He asked about you," Alexis continued, "asked if you were happy." "What did you tell him?" "I told him the truth, that you're probably happier than you've ever been, and that maybe he should have listened when you asked for that raise. She finished her coffee and stood to leave. At the door, she turned back. For what it's worth, David, I'm sorry. We should have valued you more. I should have stood up for you instead of making you feel guilty for wanting what you deserved. Thank you for saying that, I replied. After she left, I sat there thinking about the past 14 years. About the man I'd been when I met Alexis, full of ambition but willing to dim his light to fit into her family. About the man I'd become at Pemberton Technologies, increasingly bitter and undervalued. And about the man I was now, confident, respected, earning 3 times what Gregory had thought I was worth. Sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic or cruel. Sometimes it's just living well, proving wrong everyone who underestimated you, and building something better than they ever thought you could. My name is David Hartley. I'm 39 years old, Chief Technology Officer at Summit Ridge Technologies, and I asked for a 9% raise that I never got. Instead, I got something better. I got freedom, respect, and the satisfaction of knowing that the man who told me to take early retirement is now watching his company crumble while mine thrives. All it took was one phone call and the courage to finally value myself as much as I'd always valued loyalty to people who never valued me at all. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel for more incredible true stories. Drop a comment below sharing your thoughts about David's journey, and don't forget to hit that like button. Your support means everything to us. Until next time, remember that sometimes the best decision you can make is to finally bet on yourself.